A Lakota warrior stands tall on the prairie, his dark hair flowing beneath a feathered headdress, a red blanket draped over his shoulders, his right hand gripping a rifle, his left steadying a painted pony. Beside him, on June 25, 1876, 200 of his brothers wait in silence. Across the river, Major Reno, in a dusty blue uniform, saber at his side, spurs his horse forward with 130 men, their carbines gleaming under the noon sun. Within minutes, bullets fly, and Bloody Knife, a scout in a fringed jacket, falls dead, blood staining the timber floor. 2 hours later, 263 soldiers under Custer lie silent, their fate sealed in a valley just 4 miles wide. George Herondine, a scout in a worn coat, watched it all unfold and swore the newspapers lied. Historians claim Custer's men were exhausted after a 100-mile march. Yet Herondine saw fresh horses and cheerful faces. The Lakota and Cheyenne, defending their homes, turned the tide with numbers and resolve, not luck. What really happened in those 120 minutes that cost 263 lives and left 200 warriors victorious? George Herondine steps into history as a scout who rode beside Major Reno during the Battle of Little Bighorn. He wore a simple coat and carried a rifle when General Custer hired him on June 21, 1876. This meeting happened aboard the steamer Far West, anchored at the mouth of the Rosebud. Custer tasked him with carrying dispatches from Tulloch's Creek to General Gibbons's command, a job that placed him at the heart of the action. Herondine saw the battle unfold with his own eyes on June 25, 1876. He was not a general giving orders or a historian writing years later. He was a man on the ground, counting every step of the 100-mile march and every shot fired in those fatal 120 minutes. His account offers a rare glimpse into a day that claimed 263 U.S. soldiers and stood as a triumph for the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho. These nations fought in the Great Sioux War of 1876, a conflict sparked by broken treaties and the U.S. push into the Black Hills after gold was found in 1874. By 1876, the government had ordered all native bands onto reservations, but leaders like Sitting Bull refused. The clash at Little Bighorn saw 1,500 to 2,000 warriors, according to historian John Gray, face Custer's 7th Cavalry of 647 men. Herondine lived through this struggle, and his words challenge what we think we know. He called out the newspapers of his time, like the New York Herald, for printing lies. Reports claimed Custer's men were worn out and his plans reckless, but Herondine saw 130 fresh troops under Reno and a leader who marched 33 miles in one day, with care. Historians like Robert Utley have long debated Custer's choices, yet Herondine's first-hand view cuts through the noise. This video builds on his story to set the record straight. From the chaos of that June day to the quiet of this telling, Herondine's voice bridges the gap. He rode with the soldiers, heard the gunfire, and mourned the losses on both sides. His role as a scout, trusted by Custer and Gibbons, makes him a witness we cannot ignore. Let's follow his trail to uncover what really happened. General Custer led his men on a march that stretched over 100 miles from Rosebud's mouth to the Little Bighorn. This journey took 4 days, starting on June 22, 1876, and ending at noon on June 25th. George Herondine walked every mile of it, riding with 647 soldiers of the 7th Cavalry. He saw the land change from open streams to dusty trails, and he watched Custer plan each step. Historians like Stephen Ambrose have called this march a reckless dash to doom, but Herondine tells a different story. Let's break it down day by day and see what really happened. On June 22nd, the first day began at noon. Custer's column left the Rosebud's mouth, moving up the river with a steady pace. Scouts, Mitch Boyer in his buckskin shirt and Bloody Knife with a red sash tied at his waist, rode ahead on sturdy ponies. They covered 12 miles before stopping at 5 p.m. to camp. Herondine noted the bugle woke them at 4 a.m., and by 5 a.m. the men were back on the trail. The group included 31 officers, 566 enlisted men, and 50 scouts, according to Army records. This was no wild rush. Custer kept his troops together, moving slowly to watch for signs of the enemy. The second day, June 23rd, pushed them further. They started at 5 a.m. and followed the Rosebud for 35 miles. Herondine saw the tracks of an Indian trail Major Reno had followed days earlier. The trail was faint but clear, with hoofprints pressed into the dry earth. They marched until 5 p.m., setting up camp under a wide sky. That evening, Custer sent Crow scouts ahead to look for fresh clues. The men rested and the horses grazed along the stream. Herondine said a pack train of 175 mules loaded with supplies stayed right behind them. This detail matters. It shows the column moved with care, not chaos. June 24th, the third day, brought them 33 miles closer to their fate. They left camp at 5 a.m., sticking to the Indian trail. The signs grew fresher, and tension rose. Herondine rode near Custer when the Crow scouts galloped back with news. They found new pony tracks and a grim trophy, the scalp of a white soldier named Stoker, killed days before at the Rosebud's mouth. Historian Nathaniel Philbrick says Stoker's death warned of Lakota scouts nearby, yet Custer stayed calm. He halted the column for 30 minutes, gathered his officers, and talked strategy. Then they pressed on, crossing Muddy Creek, where a fight with Lame Deer's band had left scars from 1875. Herondine spotted some lodge tracks veering off, and Custer sent Lieutenant Varnum to check. Varnum returned after 2 hours, saying the tracks rejoined the main trail. The day ended at dusk with a fresh camp, and scouts sent out again. The final day, June 25th, covered 25 to 28 miles. They broke camp at 11 p.m. the night before, marching 10 miles in the dark before resting at 2 a.m. Herondine said the men unsaddled their horses and let the animals recover. At first light, they moved again, reaching the battlefield by noon. Boyer and Scout Charlie Reynolds reported a massive village ahead, with 1,500 to 2,000 warriors, as historian John Gray estimates. Custer's force was smaller, but Herondine saw no panic. The general hid his troops behind hills and rode 4 miles to a ridge for a look. This last stretch closed the 100-mile journey, a path marked by planning, not haste. Herondine's words challenged the old tales. Many books, like Evan Connell's Son of the Morning Star, paint Custer as a man racing to his end, driving tired men and worn-out horses. Herondine disagrees. He said the pack train kept pace the whole way, carrying 15 days of rations and 24,000 rounds of ammunition per Army logs. Custer posted flankers on June 24th to guard the sides. He stopped for councils twice, once after Stoker's scalp appeared, and once at Muddy Creek. He sent scouts ahead every day, from Crow riders to Boyer himself. These moves show a leader in control, not a gambler chasing glory. The march was steady, not a sprint. The men averaged 25 miles a day, less than the 40 miles cavalry could push in emergencies. Notes historian Robert Utley. Herondine saw horses still strong and soldiers ready when they hit the Little Bighorn. The Lakota and Cheyenne waited there, their village sprawling across 3 miles of valley, ready to defend their land. Custer's careful steps brought him to this fight, and Herondine's account proves it was no blind charge. The showdown loomed, and every mile built the tension we'll unravel next. June 25th, 1876, marked the day the Little Bighorn turned red with blood. George Herondine stood as a witness, his boots planted in the dust of a battle that killed 263 U.S. soldiers and crowned the Lakota and Cheyenne with victory. This fight unfolded in 3 clear stages, each one shifting the fate of Custer's 7th Cavalry. Herondine's account pulls us into the chaos, step by step, from dawn to dusk. Let's walk through it, starting with Custer's first move. The day began at first light. Custer, in his blue coat with gold trim, led his men to a halt behind low hills after a 25-mile march. He took one orderly and rode 4 miles up a divide, joining Lieutenant Varnum and Scout Mitch Boyer on a ridge. Boyer, wearing a fringed jacket and wide hat, pointed to the valley below. He called it the largest village he had ever seen, a sprawl of 1,500 to 2,000 warriors, as historian John Gray later calculated. Herondine stayed back, riding along a dry fork of the Rosebud. He spotted 2 Lakota riders, their ponies kicking up dust, crossing hills toward the Little Bighorn. Boyer later said they were 150 yards away and bolted back to camp when they saw Herondine. Custer returned after an hour, his face set with resolve. He called his officers together, split his 647 men into battalions, and gave orders. The scouts, led by Varnum and Hare, galloped ahead, covering 3 miles to the summit. Herondine rode with them, reaching a lone lodge by a creek. They slashed it open and found a dead Indian inside, a silent warning of what waited ahead. Major Reno took the lead next. He wore a dusty uniform, his saber strapped to his side, and commanded 130 men plus 20 scouts. Custer ordered him to cross the Little Bighorn River and strike the village. Reno spurred his horse into a gallop, splashing through the water at noon. Herondine followed, hearing Crow scouts shout in their tongue that the Lakota were coming. He warned Reno, and the major paused to tighten ranks. They crossed and formed a skirmish line on the prairie, 300 yards past the timber. The line stretched left and forward, facing hills where 200 warriors waited, according to Herondine's count. Firing started fast. The Lakota lit fires in the timber on the right, and smoke rose thick. Soldiers fired at shadows in the trees, but no shots came back yet. They advanced half a mile at a trot, then a gallop, until the warriors charged. The line broke to dismount, and men took cover in bushes. Herondine saw the Lakota swing left, trying to surround them. Horses went to the timber, and the fight grew hot. Chaos hit hard in the clearing. A volley ripped through the trees, and Bloody Knife, in a fringed coat with a red scarf, dropped dead beside Herondine. Blood splashed from his head, and a soldier nearby fell, crying out. Reno, on Herondine's left, shouted to dismount, then changed it to remount. Men scrambled, some stuck on foot. Reno led a charge out, cutting across the prairie toward the river. Dust blinded them, and Herondine's horse stumbled, throwing him off. He ran 150 yards back to the timber, joining Lieutenant DiRudio and 12 soldiers. They tied horses to trees and braced for a stand. Reno's retreat left 40 men dead or missing, says historian Robert Utley, a rout born of panic. From the timber, Herondine heard Custer's fight begin. Down the valley, 4 miles away, 9 loud volleys rang out, steady and sharp, mixed with fast gunfire. This lasted 45 minutes to an hour, then faded to silence. Herondine told his group the battle below had stopped. He guessed the Lakota had won, and they needed to move. They slipped out, meeting only 5 warriors on the way, and reached Reno's Hill by 5 p.m. Reno held a bluff with 350 survivors, thanks to Captain Benteen, who arrived with 120 men. The Lakota attacked hard, 500 strong, per Gray's estimate, until nightfall. Fighting flared again at dawn on June 26th, lasting until 4 p.m. Thirst hit the soldiers bad, with 7 wounded fetching water. General Terry rolled in with Gibbon's 400 troops on June 27th, finding Custer's 263 men dead across a 2-mile stretch. Herondine saw the end, but not the moment Custer fell. Herondine's story cracks the myth of a long massacre. Books like D. Brown's Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee call it a drawn-out last stand, but he said Custer's fight ended in under 2 hours. 9 volleys and quick shots point to a fast, fierce clash, not a siege. The Lakota and Cheyenne moved smart, shifting 500 warriors from Reno to Custer, overwhelming his 210 men in minutes. Herondine questions why Reno saw only 200 foes and froze. Historian Nathaniel Philbrick says Reno missed the village's true size, maybe 3,000 people total, and lost his nerve. Custer split his force expecting Gibbons, delayed 48 hours to back him up. That gap, not rashness, sealed his doom. The native victory came from numbers and home ground, a stand Herondine respects in every word. This day left scars on both sides. Herondine's boots carried him through smoke and blood, from Reno's rout to Custer's silence. The numbers tell it clear. 263 dead in 120 minutes, 200 warriors holding their land. What we thought we knew shifts here, and the hill where Reno stood sets up the final reckoning. George Herondine's boots kicked up the dust of Little Bighorn, and his words shake the stories we've long believed. The Battle of June 25, 1876, sits heavy in books and films, but myths have twisted it. Herondine saw it all, from the 100-mile march to the final shots, and he calls out 3 big lies. Historians like Evan Connell and Stephen Ambrose built Custer's defeat into a tale of folly. Yet Herondine's account sets it straight. Let's pull apart these misconceptions one by one and see what holds up. People say Custer's men staggered into battle, worn thin by a brutal march. Herondine saw something else. He said the horses were fresh, their coats still sleek after 100 miles in 4 days. The men, 647 strong when they started, stayed well-fed and cheerful. Army records show they carried 15 days of rations, enough hardtack and bacon to keep 566 soldiers and 31 officers going. Herondine watched them camp each night, resting from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. with a full stop from 2 a.m. to dawn on June 25th. Historians claim the 7th Cavalry averaged 40 miles a day in past campaigns, per Robert Utley, but this time they hit 25 miles daily. That's steady, not punishing. The pack train, 175 mules hauling 24,000 rounds of ammo, rolled right alongside them. Tired troops don't keep pace with mules. Herondine's eyes prove the men hit the field ready, not reeling. Custer's name often rings with rash bravado, a general charging blind to his doom. Herondine paints a different man. He saw Custer in his blue coat, gold trim catching the sun, moving slow and sure. The march took 4 days, not 3, covering 12 miles on June 22nd, 35 on June 23rd, 33 on June 24th, and 25 to 28 on June 25th. Custer stopped twice for councils, once after finding Stoker's scalp and once at Muddy Creek, talking plans with 31 officers for 30 minutes each time. He posted flankers on June 24th, 20 men on each side to watch for trouble. Scouts like Mitch Boyer and the Crow Riders went out daily, checking trails 10 miles ahead. Herondine heard Custer wait when Boyer said Tulloch's Fork was still 15 miles off. Nathaniel Philbrick says Custer loved bold strikes, but here he leaned on method. The plan hinged on Gibbons's 400 men joining from the north, not a solo gamble. Reckless men don't scout and pause. Custer didn't. The story often stretches Custer's last stand into hours of heroic fight. Herondine cuts it short. He heard 9 volleys and fast gunfire from Custer's spot, 4 miles down the valley, lasting 45 minutes to an hour. By 2 p.m., silence fell, and 263 men lay dead across 2 miles of hills. That's under 120 minutes total, not the half-day siege in D. Brown's Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. Reno's clash with 200 warriors took 30 minutes before his rout, leaving 40 dead or missing. Custer's 210 faced 500 Lakota and Cheyenne, shifted from Reno's front, says John Gray. 9 volleys mean aimed fire, not chaos, but the end came fast. Herondine stood in the timber, counting time, and swore it was no epic holdout. The Lakota struck hard and quick, ending it before the sun climbed high. Custer wasn't perfect. Boyer warned him the village held 1,500 to 2,000 warriors, and scout Charlie Reynolds said it'd take 6 hours to win. Herondine saw Custer nod and say he could beat them. Maybe he misread the scale, 3,000 people total with women and kids per Gray's count. His 647 split 3 ways, leaving 210 with him, 130 with Reno, and 120 with Benteen. Gibbons's delay, 48 hours late with 400 troops, broke the plan. Utley calls it a fatal misstep, not bravado. Herondine agrees the fault wasn't all Custer's. The Lakota and Cheyenne turned the tide, not U.S. blunders alone. Their unity and land shaped the win. Warriors like Crazy Horse led 500 in a downhill charge, knowing every ridge. Herondine saw them light fires, shift fronts, and hit Custer's flank in under an hour. Their village, 3 miles wide, housed fighters who'd beaten Lame Deer's band in 1875 at Muddy Creek. Philbrick notes their resolve grew from broken treaties, like the 1868 Fort Laramie deal. Ignored when gold hit the Black Hills in 1874, they fought for home, and it showed. Herondine's respect shines through, a scout awed by their strength. These truths shift the tale. No weary soldiers, no wild charge, no long last stand. Herondine's voice, steady and clear, asks us to look again at June 25, 1876. The Lakota and Cheyenne stood tall, and Custer's march met its match. What we rethink here changes how we see the war's next steps. George Herondine's story closes with a simple wish. He hoped his words would offer a new lens on June 25, 1876, a day that shaped a nation. His account strips away myths and lays bare the cost. In under 120 minutes, 263 soldiers fell, their lives snuffed out across 2 miles of valley. The Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho paid too, their victory bittersweet. The Great Sioux War of 1876 left their lands scarred, their people pushed to reservations by 1877, with 3,000 lives uprooted, says historian John Gray. Both sides bled, and Herondine saw it all. The native resilience stands out. The Lakota and their allies, 1,500 to 2,000 strong, fought not just to win, but to survive. They faced 647 soldiers with terrain they knew, a spirit forged by broken promises like the 1868 treaty. Herondine admired that strength, a testament to their will. Their stand at Little Bighorn echoes beyond the hills, a cry for home that still rings true. This tale bends what we know. If we got Custer's defeat wrong, misjudging 263 deaths in 2 hours as a long last stand, what else hides in the shadows? How many stories of the native struggle with 3,000 lives changed by 1877 do we still miss? Herondine leaves us to ponder that, a quiet call to look deeper.